Radio Play Comics is meant to adapt the stories, mostly, of great unadapted, old and forgotten comics from the past. I use voice acting and narration to abridge the work as much as possible without lessening its impact, and to bring these stories to life the best way I can. Please enjoy. Hi, I'm Nick, and welcome to the Fusion Space for today's episode of Radio Play Comics, Moonshadow, Part 1. A truly unique work in all of comics that was written by well-known Superman writer Jon DeMatteis, who at the time was more known for his work at Marvel on books such as Captain America and the Defenders, and beautifully painted by Jon L, who made his mark in comics with Moonshadow, and would go on to work on Sandman, Lucifer, and Swamp Thing, also part of DC's Vertigo line. Moonshadow strives to be high art in the form of a comic book, and while it is run through with literary references, quotes, snippets, and allusions to other works, it remains a world and story truly all its own. Celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, Moonshadow was first published under Marvel's Epic imprint in 1985 as a reward to the writer by editor Jim Shooter for his good work, as he was already leaving Marvel to work for DC, but wasn't truly completed until years later when it was reprinted under DC's Vertigo imprint in 1994 and given a one-issue sequel in Farewell Moonshadow, set many years later and properly ending the series. Moonshadow is an old man who recounts to us the story, not of his life, but of his awakening, meaning his loss of childlike innocence, experience with the world and all its complexities, and his arrival at a new understanding of life and himself. This story is a grand adventure beginning in the stars in a mysterious alien zoo created by whimsical balls of cosmic light whose actions are completely unexplainable. And we follow Moon and his small band of friends on a spaceship through a system stricken by plague and out into the larger galaxy, discovering along the way the systems of politics and finance along with the systems of madness and war, getting caught in the gears, and thus expressing the human condition of people caught up in these hectic modern times. Moon relates this to us in terms of his favorite books and poems, having grown up in an expansive library in the zoo, and in terms of his family, his mother Sunflower, a young hippie kidnapped from Earth by the cosmic balls and mated with by one of them, producing Moonshadow. He is a unique child in all the cosmos, but also very normal and human, and not only prone to art, but also to madness. His Aunt Eddie ran mad, and many would say the same about his mother when she joined the hippie movement. But whether Moonshadow is mad because of his visions and dreams and occasional laughing visitations from his inscrutable glowing ball of a father is up to you to decide. I believe he is meant to represent every human, every reader, but most strongly of all he represents the artists, those touched by madness but stable enough to wrench those mad dreams down into reality where everyone else can see them. And of course I think it should be obvious he is spiritually a stand-in for the writer himself, though I do not claim to know what, if any, events were inspired from his real life. Truly, in the matters of human nature in which this book deals, the universal truths it attempts to describe, not much has changed in the 40 years since its publication, despite the fancy new gadgets, networks of communications, and systems of division developed since then. People remain undeniably human, and so the book remains incredibly relevant. I hope you'll agree. This first part will cover a third of the total 12 plus 1 issues, and the other parts will come in time, and I'll describe where we're going when we get to the end of where we've already been. For now, I urge you to simply let the adventure take you away, and try to leave any expectations or preconceived notions at the door. You can't, but it's a nice gesture to the universe that you try, and a healthy sign if you're willing to. It is the intention of all of us creators, if I may be so bold as to count myself among the original artists, that you have plenty to think about and consider as the tale goes along, so you really don't need to bring any extra baggage in with you. That's all I'm trying to say here. In any case, you'll see that a story like this is somewhat impossible to write a good introduction to, and the sooner I stop trying to stumble onto one, the better off all of us will be. So what do you say we just get on with the show? In a remote wooded cabin, an old man with a long white beard writes on sheets of parchment with a large quill pen. Piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee. On a cloud I saw a child, and he, laughing, said to me, "Pipe a song about a lamb." So I piped with merry cheer, "Piper, pipe that song again." So I piped, he wept to hear. "Drop thy pipe, thy happy pipe, sing thy songs of happy cheer." So I sung the same again, while he wept with joy to hear. "Piper, sit thee down and write, in a book that all may read." And so he vanished from my sight,
And I plucked a hollow reed, and I made a rural pen, and I stained the water clear, and I wrote my happy songs, every child made joy to hear. Those words, minted in 1789, are William Blake's, used to introduce his Songs of Innocence. They'll serve just as well to introduce my own Song of Innocence, the tale, not of my life, but of my awakening. Dear readers, I give you Moonshadow, Book 1, Songs of Happy Cheer. Chapter 1, Some Family History. A young man stands cloaked on a high rock, facing the future with all the world's mystery and adventure laid out before him, covered in mist and fog. Once upon a time, there lived a race called the Gildoses, rarely seen, often talked about, legends throughout the universe. To call these grinning balls of light enigmatic would be an understatement. The word unfathomable is too small to embrace their expansive mystery. A group of silver balls fly through space. Question: how do you adequately label beings with no known origin, whose random manifestations cannot be predicted or explained? They surround a starship, and whose actions seem totally without motivation. One opens its large mouth and swallows the ship whole, lacking in even the faintest trace of purpose or meaning. The others giggle in response. Answer: you don't. They continue on their merry way. You simply observe, analyze, codify, and, ultimately, give up. Not that the priests and philosophers weren't tripping over themselves to make sense of the patently senseless. Some even went so far as to call the Gildoses divine instruments, come to usher in a millennium. More often than not, these great sages cited the case of the planet Bazoom. A silver-clad being blasts another like it with a laser. Here was a world that had known nothing but constant war for 200 generations. Billions upon billions had been slaughtered, and no one even remembered why the conflict had started. More, no one even cared. The gray battlefield, filled with soldiers and war machines, stretches out as far as the eye can see. Then one day, the Gildoses manifested. The grinning ball bathes them all in radiant light. And a true, lasting peace settled over Bazoom. The armor and weapons are gone, replaced by soft robes and pretty flowers. So the Aesayers hosannah'd and hallelujah'd. It's a good life, they proclaimed. It's a good God who watches over us. There were, of course, those pundits who took the opposite view, claiming that the Gildoses were evil incarnate, diabolic creatures set loose to sow the final seeds of corruption across an already damned universe. They cited the case of the planet Kvel. Robed farmers tend a peaceful and idyllic hayfield with their scythes. Here was an intelligent, sensitive, and gentle people, gleaming examples of all that is noble in the eternal soul. When those lucent spheres began appearing across their world, the Kvelers responded with spontaneous fetes that went on for weeks. They danced madly before the silver balls in the sky. And what was their reward for this grand hospitality? The balls open as if they were eyes, and regard the people with a baleful gaze. A plague. The faces in the robes are now distorted with grief and pain. The few Kvelers that survived wished they hadn't. So the naysayers beat their gong of doom. It's a wretched life, they proclaimed. It's an angry God who torments us. The Gildoses sailed insouciantly along, oblivious to the uproar. Most baffling of all the sphere's antics were the kidnappings. It was the same on every world. They would manifest, clustering about a terrified individual.
A silver ball selects a sprout-headed man from a crowd and wraps him in its energy.
Who would rise, seraph-like, suddenly giggling into the air. Then,
Both vanish with a popping sound.
bing, bop, they were gone. There was no discernible pattern to the selection of victims. Monks were snatched along with murderers, babes with dotards, Shakhternian slime shifters with Grangunian taffy bats. No one was safe. This confused the pundits. If God is good, some mused, why does he raise up the sinner with the saint? If God is angry, others wondered, why do the damned laugh as they are dragged off to perdition?
A multi-limbed alien is raised up into the air by the energy.
Ragstone Fillet had an answer.
A robed man speaks before a large crowd.
In his book, We Are All Ants in a Meaningless Cosmos, Fillet stated what was obvious to everyone but the sages. The Gildoses, he wrote, are creatures whose sole motivation, and credulity is strained by even calling it motivation, is whim. A whim of such depth and complexity that it transcends our painfully limited concept of the word.
A Gildosis appears beside him.
Thus, to label these beings, to find in their actions proof of any divine intelligence or the basis of any philosophical thought, is absurd. Unfortunately, Fillet couldn't resist using the Gildoses' actions as proof of the philosophical system postulated in the title of his book. We Are All Ants in a Meaningless Cosmos became a bestseller in 14 solar systems. Fillet's followers soon numbered in the trillions. Fillet was snatched.
Both vanish with a popping sound.
So much for fame. Still, for all his pretensions, Ragstone Fillet was right about one thing. Considering the limitations of our thought and language, whim was as close as we were ever going to get to understanding the Gildoses.
The silver light streaks from planet to planet, collecting beings along the way.
Out of one such whim was formed the zoo, destination of all the hapless puppets who had been popped, poofed, and pinged across the celestial stage.
Ragstone Fillet, the multi-limbed alien, and the sprout-headed man all had their own environments to live in.
It was a pleasant enough place.
All those specimens were well sheltered and well fed.
Their lifespans miraculously increased to near infinite years.
But typically, there seemed no point to the zoo's existence.
Many other odd-looking creatures roamed the hallways.
The captors paid little, if any, attention to their captives, which left the new arrivals with nothing but time to ponder their predicament. Inevitably, after many days of reason and rumination, histrionics and hysteria, they reached the only conclusion that could be reached. No conclusion was possible, and life went on. Chapter 2. More Family History. Life went on, too, for the inhabitants of an obscure little planet called Earth. The year, as certain Earthlings measured years, was 1946. The place, Beth El Hospital, in the magical land of Brooklyn. It was to this center of healing that sanitation man Martin Birnbaum brought his caterwauling wife, Esther.
A taxi rushes to the hospital in the rain.
And it was here that Esther, drugged, anesthetized, dreamy, gave birth to a squawking baby girl, Sheila Faye Birnbaum. Martin Birnbaum saw trouble reflected in his daughter's curious sky-blue eyes. Eyes he'd seen before on the face of his older sister, Etty. 2 years after abandoning her husband and 3 children for a life of freedom with a traveling Yiddish theater group, Etty had been found equally abandoned and totally insane in a garbage-filled apartment in Paris. She died in an asylum soon afterwards. "It's Etty," Martin lamented, studying those disturbing eyes. "Come again to torment me." 9 years later, Martin cursed his gift of prophecy. Sheila had grown into a mercurial, moody girl who shunned other children, preferred Dostoevsky to Nancy Drew, produced dozens of incomprehensible oil paintings, and passed hours on end sobbing. About what? The Birnbaums were never quite sure. Rabbis were beseeched, relatives implored, psychiatrists discreetly consulted. But by 1964, the year Sheila was electrified by the Beatles and amplified by marijuana, all the Birnbaums' hopes for their daughter's redemption were dashed. Finally, in the autumn of 1966, Sheila, her porcelain beauty now a delicate echo of her late aunt's, painted her face, spread flowers through her hair, and, tooting merrily on a silver flute, danced out the door of her parents' Ocean Parkway apartment, never to return. Despite her great intelligence, Sheila was a staggeringly naive young woman. Adopting the more colorful name Sunflower, she tooted her way across America, innocently accepting all philosophies and isms offered her. One week she was a Buddhist, the next a Marxist. On Tuesday she rallied for peace. On Thursday she agitated for revolution. It was no wonder that, by December 1968, when she arrived at the Pax Commune in upstate New York, Sunflower was one step shy of the abyss. On a cold winter night, she cradled the commune's shit-streaked cat Frodo in her arms, turned Aunt Etty's eyes heavenward, and addressed a shooting star.
"There's just got to be more to life than Nixon and acid and venereal disease,"
she said.
"So tell me, what's it all about, huh? What the hell does it all mean?"
To her surprise, the star turned and sped toward her.
Huh?
Blanketed and incandescent, she rose, as so many had before her, seraph-like, giggling into the air, and was catapulted across the sky with a gentle ping. Thinking herself in a state of divine exaltation, Sunflower waited patiently for the light to abate and God himself to appear. But instead of a bearded, benevolent creator, a sea of toothy grins emerged to greet her. For this was not heaven or nirvana, or even Middle-earth. This was the Gildosis Zoo. So she sat on the floor beside Frodo, who had been transported unharmed along with her, opened Aunt Etty's eyes wide, and began to cry. 22 years of sadness roaring forth in a flood. Sunflower surmised that she was no longer one step shy of the abyss, but 4 square in it. It was nearly a week before she found the strength to investigate her surroundings. Her new home was a spacious, pleasantly furnished dome that connected, via a series of intricate tunnels, to thousands of like structures. At first, Sunflower was frightened by her bizarre and uncommunicative neighbors, but the fear soon passed. After all, she felt no more friendless and alien here than on Earth. In time, she grew comfortable in the abyss. Sleep came in dreamless 15-hour stretches. Days were passed studying the perpetual test pattern on her 12-inch Philco television. Life was neither good nor bad. It simply was. And Sunflower did not live it so much as wander through it. One day she wandered through her own wedding, It was perhaps the strangest caprice in Gildossa's history, the first and only known mating of a GD with a member of an outside species. The affair was straight out of Esther Birnbaum's dreams for her daughter. The bride wore white. The groom smiled beatifically. The food was tasty, plentiful, and kosher. And the band played Sunrise, Sunset without missing a note. Moldo! Sunflower accepted all this matter-of-factly. She sipped champagne, danced gaily, tossed the bouquet with virginal modesty, and waved happily to well-wishers as she and her new husband drove off for their honeymoon suite. The suite was actually Sunflower's dome, done over in lace and satin. It was there that the marriage was consummated with a blinding flash and a joyous squeal, the squeal being Sunflower's, as she achieved her first and most memorable orgasm. When Sunflower awoke the next morning, her dome was as it had always been. Her bridegroom had vanished, and the previous night's events seemed like little more than a distant, dreamy harlequinade, except for the fact that she knew with absolute certainty that she was pregnant. For 9 months she bore the derision of her fellow zoo-mates, the strain of failing mental faculties, the betrayal of her own bloated body, and the scorn of Frodo, who grew extremely suspicious of the creature secreted in Sunflower's belly. But when the day of Genesis finally arrived, Sheila Fay Birnbaum performed heroically, majestically. Without benefit of hospital, doctor, midwife, or mate, she delivered up a prune-faced, pointy-headed baby boy.
Me.
A young boy now holds the silver flute and tries to play it, a faithful cat and a play ball at his sides as he faces a dark and unknown expanse.
Chapter 3. I am born and bred.
Sunflower dotes on the baby Moonshadow.
In my curious sky-blue eyes, yet another duplication of Aunt Eddie's lunatic orbs, Sunflower found all the magic and mystery she'd been hunting since her escape from Brooklyn.
You weren't a child,
she once told me.
You were a miracle. You were the answer I'd been praying for the night the Gildosses kidnapped me.
The toddler Moon is drawn to the flute, playing with it as he grows.
The miracle was named Moonshadow, after a San Francisco poet briefly met and long remembered, and I became Mother's tether to reality. For the first time she had a reason not to drift off through the surreal skies of her imagination. Looking into her heart, she discovered wellsprings of love heretofore untapped. All were mine to drink from. In those early years, what lay beyond our dome held no interest for me. My universe was a piper's tune, a silly dance, a mother's caress, and a cat's sandy tongue. Frodo having substituted adoration for suspicion when I made the transition from womb to room.
Now a boy, Moon dances to the music his mother plays.
I was content.
Moon and Frodo venture out into the halls of the zoo.
But as childish absorption gave way to boyish curiosity, I discovered that contentment is a fleeting thing, easily slain by yearning. The object of my newfound passion was the outside. I craved diversity, crowds, contrast, experience. Sunflower, whose mind was beginning to fragment again, miracles, like contentment, are notoriously transient, tried vainly to dissuade me from a course she saw as disastrous.
They'll hurt you, Moon,
she warned.
They'll break your heart.
Among her other gifts, my mother was a prophet.
Strange monstrosities glare back at them from the shadows.
The denizens of the zoo viewed earth creatures as a vile and ludicrous lot, the lowest order of life in the universe. As the spawn of an earth woman and a Gildosses, those tricksters, those jailers, those smirking manipulators, I was an obvious target. With youthful optimism, I suffered jeers, revilement, humiliation, persecution, and brutality. When it grew bored with such sport, the mob simply consigned me to the realm of ghosts and shadows. As far as my fellow specimens were concerned, I didn't exist. And so Moonshadow stands alone. Still, for all the trauma such treatment caused me, for all my Byronic fits of melancholy, my optimism endured. Why? Because I had love, I had dreams, I had song, and, ultimately, Moon and Frodo near a doorway cluttered with garbage and tentatively peek inside. I had Ira. In the center of the garbage pile they find a fur-covered man in a bowler hat opening a beer and chomping on a cigar. Frodo poops out his fur as Ira greets them.
Meow.
Ira wasn't his given name, but it was the closest thing to it a human tongue could manage. He was a surly, cynical, lecherous grouch, a hairy sensualist who cared for nothing save filling his belly and fondling his genitals. He farted with malice, belched without shame, shit where he pleased, and offended everyone. No wonder he stole my heart. Bear in mind that I was, to all intents and purposes, fatherless. However tender and supportive dear Sunflower was, the absence of a male parent left a sizable gap in my existence. Boys, so I believed then, need fathers. Real fathers. Not long-vanished balls of light. The cat streaks away down the hall. Perhaps it was the fact that Ira, too, had been marked as a pariah by our zoo mates. Perhaps he epitomized the incorrigible secret self I longed to unleash against the mob that so hurt me. Or perhaps I had simply taken leave of my senses, in the way only 12-year-olds can. Whatever the case, I instantly adored Ira. I must have a father, I decided, and he must be it. Determined, I pursued. Huh? Horrified, he rebuffed. I pursued more vigorously. Huh? He grew nasty. I grew inspired. You're dealing with a satyr, I realized. If you want to win him over, you have to appeal to his lower half. So 3 weeks into our one-sided courtship, I arrived at Ira's dome bearing gifts. Filth, really. Hardcore pornography from my mother's native planet. Ira was something of a connoisseur in the field of intergalactic erotica. In 100 years he'd amassed shockingly explicit data on the sexual habits of 1,000 worlds. But his libidinous obsession had produced an unexpected side effect. Creeping boredom. The miraculous contortions of Rachnonian monkey mutts no longer fazed him. The faster-than-light couplings of the winged wang years of Susiana 16 left him yawning. Even the formidable masturbatory displays of the 12-headed Jartubian Jumla-Chalichas barely piqued his prurience. But 3 pages into Westward Ho the Perverts, as he perused Earth's fleshy, frantic humans with their pendulous breasts and pulsing penises, it became obvious that Ira had found fresh stimulus for his jaded appetites. And so long as the smut supply lasted, I'd found a father. Moonshadow looks on with approval as Ira grins broadly from within his new treasure hoard. But the question arises, whence would this endless river of leather-bound licentiousness flow? I must confess, dear reader, that I have withheld something from you, the key to my mind's survival and my spirit's freedom, the precious gift that transcended Ira's reluctant companionship, Frodo's stubborn loyalty, perhaps even Sunflower's fragile love. My library. A smiling moon opens a huge door. Familiar as you now are with the Gildos' cryptic ways, their cosmic indifference, their unfathomable caprices, it should come as no surprise to learn that each time my poor mother pleaded with her captors for a special favor, Richie Haven's records, an ounce of hashish, a kasha kanish from Mrs. Stahl's in Brighton Beach, she was ignored. Yet the serendipitous day finally arrived when the GD's whim intersected Sunflower's wish. She requested a library in all ways equal to the finest on earth for her newborn son. Pop! She got one. Poof! I learned to scale the stacks before I could walk. Ping! I was saved. He reads under a soft light in a comfy chair amid stacks and shelves filled with books. Oh, can frail, clumsy words express what that library meant to me? It was at once an Arabian palace, a rocket ship, a time machine, a window on creation. What I knew of life on Earth, of all life outside the confines of our zoo, I learned from two sources: my mother's starry sagas of peace and love in Ocean Parkway, and those blessed things called books.
For weeks at a time I'd become a fetus in the library's dusty womb,
Wandering the aisles, pondering the choices, reading, until my aching eyes cried, "Stop!" But how could I stop? There was still so much to experience. High adventure, tragic love affairs, unsullied ideals. I was dizzy with the joy of discovery, page and print, creator and creation, all dancing together in my mind's eye. And oh, what dancers they were! Homer, Cervantes, Bradbury and Baum, Shelley, Keats, Byron and Blake, the Brontes, the Brownings, the Three Musketeers, Peter Pan and Wendy, Siddhartha and Govinda, Prince Mishkin, King Richard, and Captain Blood. Considering the influences, is it any wonder my worldview was that of the rose-tinted romantic? I saw men of all planets as exalted beings, divine in nature, who had been corrupted by society. Feelings were the door to salvation, intellect the gateway to hell, suffering the spirit's purifier. I grew into quite a stylish sufferer. The deeper the depression, the more I'd strut melodramatically about the zoo, hand against forehead, sighing and swooning like some shameless 19th century ham. Above all else, I was a dreamer of the first rank, and my most cherished dream was of escape. How I longed to vault the walls of my prison and sail the cosmos aboard a good, strong ship. Dangers would be faced, heroic heights ascended, and damsels rescued. Though the adoring beauties who populated my fantasies invariably begged me to deflower them, nobility forbade my exception. "I am waiting for her," I would modestly whisper, "the soulmate who will one day appear and redeem my worthless life with a spiritual love far beyond the fleshly pleasures you offer." This Dante-like belief in a pure and perfect Beatrice didn't prevent me from shooting semen high and low once puberty came a-knocking. Night often found me in some musty corner of the library, clutching a ragged copy of Lost Rumble in one hand and yanking on my swollen penis with the other. With the dawn came shame, repentance, and a vow of chastity as sincere as it was short-lived. Chapter 4. I am booted. There come to us all moments when life, like a defiant horse, suddenly rears itself up and gallops in a new direction. It's all we can do to hang on for the ride. My horse started bucking 3 weeks before my 15th birthday. I was sitting in the library, a copy of Jack Kerouac's The Dharma Bums, a book Sunflower first read to me when I was still in diapers, open before me. But I was finding it hard to concentrate. My throat was parched, my palms were wet, my heart a block of dread.
Something is going to happen,
I thought.
something strange, something terrible.
A glowing silver ball appears above him and speaks. Moonshadow! I was right.
The Gildosis that manifested above me was extraordinary for 2 reasons. 1, it was the first in the zoo's history to directly communicate with a specimen, and be thankful you had never heard that eerie, awful voice. 2, I knew with utter certainty that this simpering apparition was my father.
Showers of sparks burst from it in a fiery display before the lad's astonished eyes. "The time has come," my father said, "to bid a fond adieu, to say goodbye and curse the tie. Today you leave the zoo."
What? You can't be serious. Nobody has ever left the zoo.
"You're going to leave tonight." Through the beams of light, Moonshadow was able to see the harshly grinning face of his father.
But why?
Because.
Because?
Because. Well, I'm must be all. But remember, son, wherever you go, whatever you do, Daddy will be watching.
As the light fades, a smile is all that remains before the glowing orb vanishes completely. I should have rejoiced. Here at last was the answer to my prayers. Freedom was mine. But suddenly there seemed precious little difference between being set free and being cast out. Ira peeks out from behind a bookcase.
Psst. Hey, kid, is he gone? I was in the back over the wall, and I couldn't help overhear it.
Ira, what am I going to do?
Pack? Well, I'd love to stay at chat, but I'm late for a gang rape, so take care. Have a good life. And if you're ever in the neighborhood, don't bother to drop.
The furry degenerate hits a light switch on the wall as he leaves. But the Gildosis reappears before him.
And one more thing. You won't be leaving alone. Ira is going with you. What?
His eyes bug out of his fuzzy head at the news, and Ira falls to his knees, pleading.
You can't do this to me. I hate this stupid kid. I can't stand the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he smells. Shut up, Ira. Whatever you say, sir.
Can Frodo come too?
Frodo, too.
And what about... Light envelops them both as the glowing grin opens wide as if to consume them. Moon, Ira, and Frodo appear in open space. Bing! Instantly a starship appears around them. Boom! Sunflower!
Where the hell are we?
A ship! They gave us our own ship! Now the only thing that's missing is... Flute music comes piping in from another room. Mother! Moonshadow runs to her and she scoops him into her arms. That word never meant more to me than it did that fateful night. One look in Sunflower's glazed, love-lit eyes and all fear drained out of me. One touch from those trembling alabaster hands, and I was a baby again, ignorant and secure. Whatever awaited us, I was ready. Ira wasn't.
Let me out of here. I want to go back to my dome and my beer and my porno and my miserable, meaningless existence. I want to go home.
But the ship is alone in space, and the zoo is nowhere in sight. Home? My concept of home had just shattered in a million pieces. The entire universe was my home now. I looked out at the stars and saw limitless potential. Infinite choices, a cornucopia of dreams reflected in every golden spiral. All that remained was to set the course, and I set the best I knew. Second to the right, and straight on till morning. With a palsied heave and a flatulent prattle, our ship eased out into space, and the realization dawned that this was no storybook adventure that would end with the turn of a page. This was real. So I did what any sensible boy this side of Neverland would have done in similar straits. I puked my guts up and fainted dead away. What? My journey to awakening had begun. To be continued. A young woman joins old man Moonshadow on a hill. The Tin Woodsman began to use his axe at once, and just as the two Kalidas were nearly across, the tree fell with a crash into the gulf, carrying the ugly, snarling brutes with it, and both were dashed to pieces on the sharp rocks at the bottom.
Whoa,
Said the Cowardly Lion.
I see we are going to live a while longer, and I am glad of it. For it must be a very uncomfortable thing not to be alive.
A brush with the Reaper, courtesy of L. Frank Baum. I fear things haven't changed much since 1900 when the Wizard of Oz first saw print.
The universe is still populated with ugly, snarling brutes. Tin woodsmen still hack at life with their axes. And the cowardly lion in us all still quakes at the mere thought of his own mortality. But the promise of Oz remains, dear readers, for all of you, and, of course, for Moonshadow.
Watchful eyes seem to lurk in the shadows as the lad broods in a graveyard.
Book 2, A Very Uncomfortable Thing. Chapter 1, I Encounter Death. Once upon a time, on the faraway planet Earth, in the magical land of Brooklyn, there lived a sanitation man and his daughter. Every Saturday night, Martin Birnbaum would take little Sheila's hand and journey forth in search of wondrous breads called bialys, legendary fish called lox, and the ancient Hebrew delicacy, Philadelphia cream cheese. Heading homeward, a cool cream soda between his lips, the normally taciturn Martin would become a shameless raconteur and philosopher. Although her father was no Socrates, nor even a ragstone fillet, Sheila absorbed his every word. But the word that shook the girl to her 9-year-old core was death. "You're born, you live, you die," quoth the sage of Ocean Parkway. "And that's it. There's no heaven nor hell. Just a tombstone with your name on it. You're in the ground, and you're nothing." Despite her penchant for moodiness and melodrama, Sheila was a born optimist, and this bleak vision played havoc with her worldview. She turned to her mother for answers, but
Girls your age shouldn't think about such things,
was hardly the revelation she required. So she'd lie awake half the night, pondering nothingness, and how to avoid it. When sleep finally came, nightmare often came with it, in the form of Sheila's long-buried Aunt Etty.
In her dreams, Sheila runs from Eddie's eyeless face as it emerges from a wall.
Since birth, Sheila had been told that she and Crazy Eddie were products of the same cracked mold. Their eyes, sky blue, identical, were offered as conclusive proof. No wonder then that Dream Eddie demanded her eyes returned.
I can't see,
The mouldering corpse would wail.
and it's all your fault.
Thus death chased my mother through life, and my mother chased her dreams, and her dreams led to the Gildosis Zoo, and the zoo brought forth
me. My first encounter with the King of Terrors came at an earlier age than Mother's. I was 4 years old, a happy seal splashing in the bath. One moment the universe was light and love and innocent joy, and the next,
Moonshadow looks out the window and sees the crescent moon.
Death himself descended.
A grinning shadow billows out behind it, forming a demonic shape behind a vision of his mother as a corpse.
Call it vision, fantasy, or hallucination. Call it what you will. But in a flash, I saw that I was born to die, and that everyone I cherished was condemned to the same awful fate. "Mommy," I cried, "I don't want to die." But Sunflower's reply, "Little boys shouldn't think about such things," was less than reassuring, especially with Death himself hovering in the room.
Old Man Moonshadow stands beneath that same crescent moon shape in the night sky.
I never saw his face clearly, but I did see his eyes, and that nasty, nasty grin. It was a sickeningly familiar grin, but I didn't realize how familiar until years later. Chapter 2, A Birthday Surprise.
Moon gazes longingly out at the stars over a control console.
3 weeks had passed since our odd little crew had been booted out of the zoo, and the grand adventures I yearned for had yet to materialize. Fear stood on my left, anticipation on my right, while boredom sat squarely on my shoulders. Ira, compassionate soul that he was, did his best to keep my morale high.
"Schmuck, dork, dunghead, asshole, you got us into this mess."
So touched was I by his concern that I couldn't find the proper words to thank him. Same to you?"
No doubt this clever repartee could have continued for weeks.
Had grand adventure not finally reared its head? Suddenly they are surrounded by an armada, heading in the other direction. Ira, look! Ships! Hundreds of them! But where did they come from? And where are they going in such a rush? Reasonable questions. Our answers weren't long in coming. A view screen sprang to life, filled with a round white face.
Attention, unidentified vessel. The Kickapoo cluster has been quarantined due to an outbreak of the Pukadook plague. Whoever you are, whatever your destination, turn back. This has been a recording. You may leave up to a 30-second message after the beep.
Ira grabbed the microphone.
Testing. 1, 2. Hello? Got room for one more over there? I'm short. I don't eat much. I know some terrific dirty jokes.
The other ships all speed on their way.
So, fellas? Ah, shit.
The refugees departed. Ira fumed. I prepared to reverse course. Then we picked up the distress signal. A light flashes on the console and Moon presses a button. Beep, 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 beep. Someone was in trouble in the heart of the Kickapoo cluster. A true Lancelot in training. Visions of endangered damsels filling my head. I reached for the forward controls. Ira stopped me.
Are you stupider than you look? This whole sector's infested with plague. We can't go in there.
Sunflower, rising from a languorous rest below deck, dissented. If someone wants our help, Moon, then they should have it. Show kindness to thy brothers, and free them from suffering, right? I was utterly confused. To turn my back on a being in need contradicted every belief I held dear. But entering the cluster was flirting with suicide, and I had no desire to indulge in cosmic wrist-slashing. I agonized, I theorized, I scrutinized my conscience. I decided. We're going in. Their starship zooms ahead. Then wet my pants. As we sailed on, I felt lightheaded, giddy with fright and wonder. Space beckoned, a vast ocean, and I could not help but beckon back. Hello, Marlowe, I silently called. Are you out here, seeking Kurtz? And you, Ahab, have you found the dreaded white whale? But Marlowe and Ahab were creatures of imagination, their imaginers long dead. Perhaps, I thought, I'll be joining them. For hours we navigated through wrecks and ruins, past worlds that were and would never be again. Death himself had been here, grinned his grin, and moved along. Then, at last, the signal source was reached, the humpbacked, battered Moby Dick of all spacefaring ships. Moon's ship stops near a much larger ship, floating derelict in space. Beep, 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 beep. To a boy who'd always dreamed of fighting dragons and tilting at windmills, dying of Pukadook plague seemed a terribly unromantic prospect. Still, I managed a weak smile as Mother ushered me toward the airlock.
Alone at last.
No sooner had we left the bridge than Ira made his move, assailing our central computer, Cornelia 17, an irascible gallium-affray of tubes, toggles, wires, and waste. The fuzzy schemer demanded control of the ship, ordered a speedy getaway. But Cornelia, dear and loyal thing, would have none of it.
Touch my knobs,
She barked.
and I'll fry you with every vote I've got.
Ira, in his wisdom, declined the dare.
Brr.
Sunshine and Moonshadow float between the ships in spacesuits. Meanwhile, two tiny dandruff flakes made their way across the scalp of space, alighting upon a gash at the troubled ship's bow. I hesitated at the rim, but Sunflower, chanting Om Mani Padme Hum, leapt straight away out of sight. What could I do but follow my Brooklyn-born bodhisattva? Down, 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 into the belly of the whale. Moon? Hang on a minute, Mother. Let me get this thing lit. He lights a candle in the dark interior, and Frodo looks around from within his spacesuit's bubble dome. Oh, wow. Scared, Moon? Nah. Petrified, maybe, but not scared. They proceed through a tunnel. We could go back. No, we've come this far. We might as well. Did you hear that? What? That. I think we're being followed. No. A hand alights on Moon's shoulder. Ah!
and Ira greets them, smoking his cigar through a port in his bubble helmet.
Don't get your balls in an uproar, kid. It's only me. I was getting antsy waiting over there, so I figured I'd come along and watch you two make asses of yourselves.
Suddenly, a pale alien leaps onto his back and wraps himself around Ira's head. They fall, and the alien rants and raves above him.
You are the ass, oh bubble-headed intruder. You have followed your brothers aboard a doomed ship. 300 souls once walked these corridors. Now I alone remain to tell the awful tale. Hear ye the words of the prophet, who said, the gods will punish us with plague. Our transgressions will boil within us, eating our entrails, gobbling our spirits.
Piss off!
Ira puts a cigar out on Alien's face,
Ah!
and he runs away into the darkness.
Ouch! Ooh! Eesh! Ouch! Ooh!
Terrific work, Captain Moonshadow. You put all our lives on the line for that.
I was appalled. I was ashamed. But not for long. The voice that echoed suddenly around us, the clangorous wail that stilled our souls, was heartbreak, melancholy, want, and regret. Most of all, it was need. Huddled together against the dark, we followed that thundering need down through the entrails of the beast. Sunflower led the way. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she seemed alert, almost vibrant. Her intellect, long ago cremated by LSD, mescaline, and granola, was somehow stirred by the cry that led us on. We walked and walked for hours, Ira farting, Frodo mewling, Mother silent as a monk. I was lost in fantasies of Pinocchio, wandering the Monstro's ambergris aisles. But my fairy tale was rudely interrupted by a grim, revolting sight. A woman, of sorts, flesh-pocked and festooned with boils, blisters, scabs, and sores, body swollen to ridiculous proportions. I half expected her to float up toward the ceiling, a plague-inflated balloon. Her plaintive scream was deafeningly familiar. We had found Need's source. We had also found Need's daughter, a fragile, thin, and sickly thing, eyes alight with hope. The alien child's lips remained still, but her thoughts assaulted us, frenetic and garbled. Her mother, she said, was in labor and had been so for many days. The disease that was slowly murdering them both was playing havoc with the birth process. The baby would not emerge.
And who,
Ira opined,
could blame him?
the girl wanted our help, pleaded for it, burned our psyches with her desperation. Ira turned to leave. I stood frozen by fear and disgust. Sunflower unlatched her atmosphere suit. Frantic, I protested. She placed a finger over her lips with such serene decisiveness that I was hard-pressed to utter another word. I can't be bound up at a time like this, Mother explained, as she took the suffering woman in hand. I need to touch, to help. Sunflower takes the alien woman's hand. To heal. To die? I thought, not daring to speak it. It's only air, Nurse Sunflower whispered, tenderly massaging her patient's pulsing belly. You don't have to be afraid of air. But it wasn't the air I feared. The life support in this section of the ship was still functioning, still strong. It was the plague riding it. Sheila Faye Birnbaum refused to hear me. She was transformed, reborn, just as she'd been 15 years before, when she'd single-handedly delivered up her only son, her only miracle. 15 years, I yelped. Mother saw realization explode in my eyes and laughed. Do you see now, Moon? Do you understand? Today's not just any day, it's your birthday. I understood too well. In the trompe l'oeil that was her life, my mother had found joy on too few occasions, had found bliss on only one, my birth. As she worked with delicacy and compassion to aid this dying woman in delivering up a miracle of her own, Sunflower was searching for heaven, for the source of miracles. She searched not only for herself, but for her child, and for all creation's hungry hearts. So she struggled and delighted,
sighed and crowed long into the endless night. The patient was lost, but the babe survived. Narrow arms stretched into the air. It reached, tentatively at first, then with eagerness and curiosity. They searched for something to grasp. Toward life, light, freedom, when suddenly a large bug-like head filled with huge teeth bites into Sheila's stomach. Food. Chapter 3. I encounter death again. Old man Moonshadow still grieves as he remembers.
Even now, so many years later, the horror is fresh, the grief newborn. Oh, Sunflower. Her blood roared forth, a waterfall, as I clutched her to my breast. She moaned, more an animal than a woman, and I moaned in harmony with her.
But the thing that had done this was lumbering closer, and we had to make it back to our ship if there was any hope of saving Mother's life. My legs buckled beneath me, but I held fast and staggered on. Sunflower's eyes were glazed, unseeing, turned inward toward her pain. As we fled, I remembered Ira, and hot panic erupted in my gut. I needn't have worried. He was safely ahead of us, having sprinted for the nearest airlock at the first hint of danger. Fate, Ragstone Phillip once wrote, is a lie. God's watchful eyes are blind. Survival is predicated upon enlightened selfishness. Ira's bowler hat becomes a fireman's helmet as he, bravely leads the escape. It was the one credo Ira adhered to with unwavering loyalty, and that day at least, the raving alien blocks their way.
Turn back, ye heathen reprobates! Turn back, ye peccants and Philistines!
Ira grabs him by the throat.
I said it before, and I'll say it again.
And hurls the alien behind them.
Piss off!
It served him well. With a morsel of food to keep it occupied, the infant berserker momentarily abandoned the chase, and we won the race to freedom. Moonshadow, Ira, and Sunflower float back to their ship. But we lost so much, much more. Moon, Mother muttered hoarsely as we tumbled toward home. The girl, the little girl, we have to go back for her. We can't leave her alone with that. She coughed, spat blood across her visor. With that, she repeated. Then, much to my relief, she fainted. If only I could have done the same. Instead, the flickering image of that innocent child, left alone with her grotesque sibling, played endlessly in my mind, even as our ship pitched recklessly through space, putting unmeasurable distances and unmeasurable guilt between us. But all thoughts of the child were soon buried, not deep enough, I fear, beneath the weight of more immediate concerns. Sunflower had lost too much blood. My mother, my bodhisattva, my universe, was dying. Moon, I'm frightened. There's nothing to be frightened of, Mother. You're going to be fine. No lies, my little miracle. It's time to say goodbye. No, not goodbye. You're going to... something I want you to have before I leave. Mother, please, don't talk this way. Hush. Take it. It's belonged to you in spirit for a long time now. The flute. The flute! It had been Aunt Ettie's, bought second-hand at a Lower East Side pawn shop. With it she piped her way out of a marriage, away from a family, and into a madness that others saw as pitiable, that she saw as divine. When they found Ettie, dead in a Parisian asylum, the flute was locked between her cracked blue lips. What melody, I've often wondered, was conjured in that final hour? It had been Sunflower's, found in a long-forgotten box of her aunt's few belongings. With it she piped her way out of mundanity, away from her parents, and into mystery, confusion, and celestial dreams. When I was a child, I imagined the flute was a magical relic, left in that pawn shop by Merlin the magician, in need of a few extra dollars as he journeyed from Camelot to infinity. Its music was the music of my aspirations, my yearnings, my unfolding. It was the only material thing I ever coveted. But as I knelt beside my mother's deathbed, there was nothing in all the universe I wanted less. "No," I protested. "You have to keep it. It will make you better. It will keep you alive." She smiled through agony and fear, shook her head, and pressed the flute into my trembling hands. Then Sheila Fay Birnbaum called out to the father whose grim pronouncements still terrified her, to the mother whose flustered denials were more useless now than ever. Fixing her eyes upon some unattainable heaven, some unknowable truth, some cosmic meaning that had always eluded her, she reached out, clutched empty air, and gave up the ghost. The teenage boy kneels by Sheila's bedside as blood flows from her mouth onto the sheets. The young man walks solemnly away from his mother's still form and looks out the window into the stars. A brilliant glow appears in the room behind him. Boing! Huh? He turns and sees a glowing silver ball, its face fixed in a wide grin. Was it Death himself who visited me then? The grin was Death's, most certainly, that mocking, maddening cage of teeth. But I knew, beyond all doubt, that it was my father who floated there, faded there, then vanished from my sight. Chapter 4. I Pray for a Miracle. Had he come to pay his respects to Sunflower? What could a Gildosis know of respect? Had he come to aid me in my hour of need? Need and aid were humbug to his breed. No, he had come to float, fade, and vanish. He had come to confuse. He succeeded. So the orphan boy stood studying his mother's corpse. Already a waxen pallor had settled on her skin. Her mouth was curled back, a befuddled rictus, blotches of dried spittle gathering at the corners. Is this my mother? I wondered, and concluded that it could not be. This was a house, once lived in, now abandoned, a coat cast off. The essence of Sheila Fay Birnbaum had fled. But the question arose, how I fought to keep it down. Fled to where? An angelic heaven? A demonic hell? The oblivion so scrupulously detailed by the sage of Ocean Parkway those long Brooklyn years ago? My mind was spinning, my heart was breaking. I screamed and screamed and screamed. I ran from Sunflower's deathbed, seeking furry, hatted solace. "Ira!" I howled. "She's dead! My mother's dead!"
Everybody dies, kid.
Was Solace's reply. Then he kicked me across the room, picked his teeth, and turned away. A ball of despair, hopelessness, and horror, I huddled by mother's side, my soul cleansing itself with a tempest of tears. Then the rain ceased, the fear abated, despair departed, and hope, the thing with feathers, fluttered upon my brow. In response to hope's urging, my fingers entwined, my eyelids closed, and I prayed. Dear God, if you do exist, and oh, I know you do, please prove it to me, to us. Bring her back, dear God. Raise her up like Lazarus. A miracle, dear God. Give us a miracle. For days on end I eschewed sleep, food, and sense, praying unceasingly for Sunflower's resurrection. I knew that God would hear my entreaty. I knew I would be rewarded for my faith. And I was. Mottled flesh was my reward. Hollow eyes and a potent stink, that finally drove me, vomit spraying like well-shaken seltzer, from the room. The symphony of my mother's life had been utterly decomposed. But the symphony of her death had yet to reach its final chord. Perhaps I had been denied a miracle, but Mother would not be denied respect. She must have a decent funeral, I decided, in time to find Ira dragging Sunflower's body toward the nearest airlock.
You're nuts!
He yelped when informed of my plan.
We've gotta dump this meat! She smells worse than I do!
Adamant, I stood my ground. Apathetic, he acquiesced.
Do what you want,
He grumbled, flipping me the bird.
it's your funeral.
Consulting the celestial yellow pages in Cornelia 17's reference banks, I discovered that we were within a day's journey of the planet Gimme Gimme, a small world, a mall world, that provided the cosmic consumer with a cornucopia of shops and services, including a one-stop mortuary/crematorium called the Funeral Palace. Our guarantee, the ad read, the death of a lifetime, or your money back. One course alteration and 19 hours later we were locked in orbit around Gimme Gimme, locked too in galactic gridlock.
It's a bloody weekend,
The parking attendant complained.
every asshole in this quadrant shops on a bloody weekend.
Taking a ticket and leaving the ship in the attendant's care, I ferried down to the planet's surface, a soused Ira, 2 beers in hand, 3 beers in belly, stumbling close behind. Chapter 5. Arrangements are made. Wending through the crowds, and crowds and crowds and crowds, and I thought the zoo overpopulated, I found my way to the funeral palace. Moon and Ira walk under the giant neon sign. Not easy to miss, I admit, and made the acquaintance of the funeral director, Mr. Jobadiah Unctious.
Oh, you poor, teary-eyed, pale-fleshed little thing. The stamp of sorrow is upon your forehead. Please, pretty please, let Mr. Unctious help.
He was an oily phony, a vulturine parasite, but my grief had stripped me of both reason and the will to protest. Unctious talked. I listened. He proposed. I agreed. He billed. I paid. The mountains of cash I placed in those greasy paws meant nothing to me. I wanted Mother's passing to matter, to be noted by the universe, not yawned over and forgotten. Toward that end I hired professional mourners,
The finest keeners, criers, sighers, screamers, sobbers, and teeth gnashers money can buy.
according to Unctious. But what I didn't know was this. The Mourners Guild was out on strike. Fewer hours, higher pay, and unlimited necrophilia were their demands. And Mr. Unctious, sly fiend, had called in scabs to lament poor Sunflower. Unctious ushers in the undulating crowd of usurping ululators.
Right this way, ladies and derelicts. Free drinks, and all you can eat after the performance.
Ira, aware of Unctious's machinations, no weeping blurred his vision of reality, ensconced himself in a tavern several blocks south to booze, gorge, fart, tweak breasts, bite bottoms, and scheme. Ira's bowler has become a fancy top hat as he indulges his gentlemanly pursuits. When, after refusing to pay his bill, he was beaten and bounced out on his fuzzy rear, he didn't care. For the first time in 47 years, Ira had an idea. While inspiration fermented beneath my companion's hat, the memorial service got underway. Chapter 6. Rabbis and Riots. Sheila, stuffed, propped, posing, limbs motorized and moving, skin powdered and puffed, sat enthroned in the front of the room, a happy mannequin. At her feet I piped a sun's sorrow song, while Frodo meowed a feline dirge. Calmer than the corpse I was, thanks to the sedatives Mr. Unctious's staff pharmacist had pumped into me.
Funerals are so depressing,
The pharmacist told me as he needled my tush.
I don't know why people even bother.
Around us the mourners plied their trade, plainting so loud that even a stone-deaf god could hear them. Whether induced by drugs, grief, or the supernatural, I could never surely say. But suddenly, Sunflower's spirit appeared before me, pirouetting on the air. "I'm fine, Moon," Mother's ghost told me. "There was nothing for me to be afraid of. The soul lives on forever, Moon, forever and a day." I reached out to take her hand, but smoke was all I touched. Like Father, Mother had floated, faded, and vanished. But instead of confusion, she left a rosy melancholy in her wake. To my left I saw Ira staggering through the door. To my right, Mr. Unctious, a smarmy, grinning whore. The mourner's cries rose, crested, then fell. The rabbi entered, spoke wisely and well. Perhaps the appearance of a rabbi light years from the nearest yarmulke factory bears some explaining. Wanting Mother's obsequies to echo her family faith, I fed my fractured knowledge of Judaism into a machine Unctious called his telepathic transbraintiantulator. The device was then attached to the funeral palace's resident pulpiteer. A switch was thrown and pop, poof, ping, instant rabbi. It was a cliché-filled oratory, pompously delivered. But clichés were needed, pomposity demanded. This, so Mother had led me to believe, was how loss was met, how faith was clung to. So, meeting and clinging, I wept. For Mother, for her life, for myself. But even as my tears shooted suicidally groundward, outside the event, the Jilted Mourners Guild have arrived. The funeral of Sheila Faye Birnbaum. They smashed their way in through the doors. Took a very peculiar turn. The rabbi runs off stage as a scab gets punched. The Mourners Guild, catching wind of the strike breaking, had invaded the funeral palace to express their great displeasure. Ira shoves one of the intruders against a wall as the place quickly becomes a riot scene. I cowered in a corner. How much was a boy to take? Shivering and stuttering, calling Sunflower's name. I wanted her spirit to sweep me up to heaven, to peace and sanity. But the only spirit I encountered was Aunt Ettie's, ghastly and grotesque. "I can't see," Ettie wailed, reaching for my eyes. Identical to Mother's, identical to hers. "And it's all your fault." I closed those eyes tight, hands clapped upon my ears, remaining that way until fear and curiosity forced me to peek. Silent carnage was my view. The police, I soon learned, had been there, carting one and all away. Scrambling to my feet, I raced to Sunflower's throne, but the Queen of Death was gone. Then I spied the devils who'd stolen her. As the cremation team took Sunflower, "Mother!" I took leave of my senses. Moon pounces on one of the men carrying his mother's body. "Ah!" And there is a scuffle. And, shortly, the other man pounds him on the head. My senses took leave of me. Moon rises to see the Acme Incinerator's truck rolling away. Mother was bagged and burned. "Oh, little boy, these nice men are here to see you. Get the little putz out of here." I was netted and nabbed. The men in white coats bring down a large butterfly net on him. They locked me up and threw away the key.
You know, this couldn't have worked out better if I'd planned it myself.
I found out, many months later, that he had, tipping off the Mourners Guild and instigating the riot. Ah, Ira. It seemed from that moment on that my life became one continual riot, a dance with chaos.
choreographed by a brain-damaged Gildosis. I was weary. I was wounded. I craved a warm, dark womb. But no womb was forthcoming. My journey to awakening had many miles to go. To be continued.
I know in the introduction I promised you 4 issues in this first part, but I just couldn't make it. I was only able to edit 2 of them together with the chaos that my life has become. I hope there will be more forthcoming, but I'm not promising it right now. This show makes me literally no money, and I have to do something to get money in my life. I don't know what. I can't figure it out. Seems that my own life has become a dance of chaos orchestrated by a brain-damaged Gildosis. No offense to the truly brain-damaged out there, I happen to love someone like that. It is only a term of art. In any case, this is it for right now. I intend to make another video updating on my life status. And I'm sorry this isn't the full 4 parts mentioned in the intro. I have the material recorded, I just have to edit it, and I have to have will and peace of mind to be able to do that properly. And it's really hard to come by those right now. I hope you're all doing better out there, and thank you for the kind words those who have offered them. For now, Radio Play Comics is signing off. Goodbye. And, as always and ever, thanks for watching.